alava. Kayo wangalilu, shalavanangada, kamadalahi samithi. Hello loves, it's yours truly, Zazara Cordovana, and I give you a warm welcome to the kingdom of Atlantea, the kingdom of Atlantis. Welcome to Thala Nation, your source for authentic Atlantean culture and heritage. So my fellow Atlanteans, my Thala, shalava, how are you? Hopefully your love is well. Love is beautiful. Today, I'm going to talk about something important when it comes to the Atlanteans, and that is, who is an Atlantean? What makes one an Atlantean? Do the Atlanteans still exist today? If so, who are they? Who are her descendants? As I have revealed, I am an ordained oracle of the ancient antediluvian Atlantean civilization through the god of my ancestors, the great Mother Yeva. I am an Aboriginal American woman, ethnically descendant of the old world Thala, who settled here in North America 200,000 years ago. Many of my people had our cultures, languages, and traditions stripped from us by the colonizers, and we were forced to take on a new racial classification. It is important to separate the fictional Atlantis from the historical, authentic Atlantis. That Atlantis was a very real civilization called Atlantea, whose people were ethnically known as Thala. They had a normal history and way of life like everyone else on Earth, and they also had things unique to themselves, unlike everyone else on Earth. Did you know that the Americas were first settled and discovered by the Atlanteans? That all the Americas were known as Greater Atlanteans? Great Atlantis. Throughout this video and the ones to follow, I'm going to discuss what makes someone an Atlantean. Who is an Atlantean? The descendants of the Atlanteans, and what these people look like. Now, when it comes to being ethnically Atlantean, one must understand that the Atlanteans as a people did not describe themselves based on their race, but who they were inside, okay? The Atlanteans were a spiritual race. What you look like was just an accessory. For this reason, though the Atlanteans were a melanated people indigenous to Northwest Africa and the islands, anyone from anywhere could become Atlantean and or join the Thala Nation simply by spiritual lineage, not blood lineage. So blood quantum and all the unnecessary stuff, it's just not of our culture. We're universal. This spiritual lineage went back to the mother of Atlantis, the goddess Yeva. The mother of Atlantis, the goddess of my people, is the root, the tree of our civilization. She gives birth to Atlanteans, past, present, and future, blood kin or spirit kin. One does not have to be born in Atlantean family to be Atlantean. It is a spiritual choice and decision one makes, which often involves the literal baptismal ritual of initiation called Amawana, which literally means womb. Amawana. Or technically, it means divine womb, the womb of the great mother, the universe. That was the primary way of citizenship or initiation for foreigners who wanted to become Atlantean or be one with the people. They would have to be spiritually reborn and become a child of Yeva through a sophisticated 3-step baptismal ritual. When one participates in the ritual of initiation into the Thala tribe or nation, they are inviting Goddess Yeva into their soul, along with the entire spirit and soul of Atlantean culture and the Atlantean ancestors. And I will speak more on tribal initiation or Atlantean citizenship in a later chapter, but for now, I will focus on what makes one Atlantean. There were 2 types of Atlanteans, okay, loves? The blood kin and the spirit kin. Now, the blood kin Atlanteans were and are those who had or have a direct bloodline to the physical race of the Atlantean Thala peoples. Genetically, according to my spiritual dreams from Mother, the Atlanteans were a copper-colored African people originating in ancient lush green Northwest Africa, around where modern-day Morocco and Western Sahara lies today. The Atlanteans were genetically kin to the primeval North African humans depicted on North African rock art, and in appearance resembled modern-day so-named African Americans and North African Berbers, among others. A maritime and seafaring culture, they island hopped from Northwest Africa to and through the Atlantic islands. They were once emerged, or the islands that were once emerged, and some still emerge to this day, until finally landing in the Americas 200,000 years ago, becoming the American Aborigines. The American Aboriginals, whose ancestors voyaged across the Atlantic from the island in North Africa, are direct descendants of the Atlanteans, the Negro Indians as they were called by the European colonizers in historical records. Spirit-kin Atlanteans now were and are foreign-born Atlanteans who did or do not have a direct blood lineage of the Atlantean race, but became Atlantean through adoption and formal tribal initiation, becoming bloodkin of the Atlantean race through spiritual baptismal ritual, being spiritually reborn from the mother of Atlantis. The Atlanteans were a spiritual race, meaning the true Atlantean bloodline was water and energy, and not just any energy, but energy linked to the mother of Atlantis. Anybody spiritually reborn through the mother of Atlantis, according to Atlantean tradition, becomes a full-blooded Atlantean, despite their race or origin, which means forsaking one's old or foreign-born heritage, identity, and culture, and fully adopting and learning Atlantean culture, traditions, language, and spirituality, including, but not limited to, adopting a native Atlantean name and joining a clan based on your star sign. And I will talk about the 12 clans of Atlantis in a later video. That is how deep tribal initiation ritual was among the Thala people. The initiation baptism ritual, born from the womb of the mother of Atlantis, Amawana, completely purifies one's soul and identity. The reason is because the soul of the goddess of the Atlanteans permeated all her children. She was everything to them, and being immortal, there are those today who have that spiritual lineage, and thus can claim that their Atlantean heritage if they want to. Because you have to understand, the Atlanteans had a strong belief in culture and reincarnation. Okay, and the Atlanteans as a whole were not so fixated on their physical form, but their spiritual form as being spiritual children, star children of the Great Mother. So what that means is that if you were born in another culture or in another part of the earth or in another race or what have you, if race really exists, you may not look like the majority of indigenous Atlanteans, but they will know who you are by your soul, the light that you radiate. Okay, so a true Atlantean, a true Atlantean race is the soul, it's the spirit. It's anyone who is a child of the mother, the Great Mother, and a child who knows their mother. It is the children of the light or the star children. These are your true Atlanteans, okay, which goes beyond all, physical forms and what have you. Okay. And here's the mystery, okay? It is true the original physical Atlanteans were dark-skinned or melanated African people who settled along the northwest African coast circa 320,000 BC before setting sail for the islands, becoming the Atlanteans and by extension Aboriginal Americans. But the truth of the matter is, physical race, as I said, was not important to these people. To the Atlanteans, and I will speak on this later, their true race was spiritual. There were 12 spiritual quote-unquote races in Atlantean culture based on the zodiac. And again, this goes back to the 12 clans of Atlantis, which the 12 clans of Atlantis were based on the zodiacs. And I will speak about Atlantean astrology in the future. Each clan was its own race. What this means is the Atlanteans were a spiritual race. As a people, they were not exclusive, but were inclusive as a culture. Anyone, no matter where they were from, if they loved the mother of Atlantis and was born through her, they became a full-blooded Atlantean. And by full-blooded Atlantean, I mean the energy of your soul becoming intermingled with the energy of the mother as she possesses the new Atlantean as her own. Foreigners the world over during the age of Atlantis were adopted into the Thala nation, becoming one with the people, either through marriage, love for Atlantean culture, or just a spiritual call home. It was not until much later, during the imperialistic era, did you have the increasing occurrence of genetic mutations of not only among the Atlanteans, but humanity as a whole. The native Atlanteans became a colorful people, even among themselves. Atlantis was and is a universal culture. Every human being on this earth can become Atlantean, But to become Atlantean is to forsake one's birth identity and culture and take on a new. Being completely reborn in the spiritual sense. Why? Because when you become Atlantean, you become one with not only the people of the fallen nation, but the universe, all life. Because as I said, when it comes to Atlantis, it is really important to understand that Atlantis is a spiritual culture. Okay, an Atlantean is rooted in the great mother of the cosmos. Okay, the mother is the crystal of Atlantis. I will talk about that more in a little bit. The mother is the true crystal of Atlantis. She is the inner light. She gives birth to all Atlanteans, to all star children, all children of the light. So to answer your question, who is an Atlantean? The blood answer is one of them anyway. Is most Aboriginal Americans. The spirit answer, anyone who loves the mother of Atlantis and is reborn through her, no matter their race, color of their skin, ethnic origin, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, height, hair type, age, whatever. The Atlanteans wanted to initiate all of humanity into their nation and ascend the world into a golden age of enlightenment, freedom, and love. Love, freedom, and prosperity. Unfortunately, an evil Atlantean individual rose to power and made that dream a nightmare through world domination, misusing the crystal. Thus Atlantis fell. And this particular evil Atlantean individual, I will speak about her. She was the last queen of Atlantis, according to my spiritual dreams. But a part of me doesn't really want to talk about her on this channel. But yeah. The reason the Atlanteans were so powerful was not only because of their goddess or technological advancements. It was because they were a spiritual empire. And because they were so racially diverse, even being a majority melanated, no one could tell who an Atlantean was or not. Atlantis was universal. They were beyond the land territory. Atlantis was humanity itself. Atlantis was and is a universal spiritual culture and has always been. The mother of Atlantis is the blue crystal itself. She is the spirit, wisdom, and power of the Atlantean people, both blood kin and spirit kin, and it is she who gives birth to Atlanteans, the children of the light. Atlantean means child of the light, ascended one, shining one, star child. And now I'm going to talk about the physical appearance of the Indigenous Atlanteans, which is also important, which it's kind of not, but I mean, everyone wants to know, to be honest. But before I begin talking about this, it's important to mention beforehand that I'm going to be talking about race, and I may or may not use terms that may be offensive. With that being said, I'm only using these terms to clarify or help explain what I saw in my spiritual visions and dreams from Mother as an oracle, so I do apologize in advance if I offend you. But personally, as a Thala woman, I do not believe in race classifications as is in my culture, but alas, I feel I have to use them to help explain what I was shown. With that being said, the Indigenous Atlanteans, as I clearly saw them, looked identical to a people classified as African American or Black. And further, they looked like the Tuareg, Siwa, Sahrawi, and other Berber ethnic groups. There were Atlanteans who looked like Ethiopians, Somalis, and other African Horn peoples, and Atlanteans who looked like South Asians or Indians. The Atlanteans, though an African people, were very colorful and diverse. There were Atlanteans who were as dark as people in Sudan, especially the Nilotic people, and also as light as some modern-day Berbers, Italians, among others, having an ivory complexion. But as a majority, the Atlanteans were a copper-colored people in complexion. They were a beautiful brown people who had a reddish or even violet hue or glow when in direct sunlight. The physiognomy of the Indigenous Atlanteans was just as diverse. Most Atlanteans, as I saw them, had brown, hazel, and green eyes, but gray eyes and even blue eyes were also common in the Atlantean gene pool. Atlanteans had all types of textured hair as well, according to as I saw. Most Atlanteans had curly and or kinky, coarse hair, but there were also Atlanteans with silky straight hair like that of modern-day South Asians. I saw Atlanteans with expansive afros like Fijians. Most Atlanteans had full lips and fine noses and almond-shaped eyes, but there were also Atlanteans who had thin lips, broad noses, and narrow eyes, having the epicanthic fold like many Khoisan people and modern East Asian people, among others. Yes, there were some indigenous Atlanteans who could pass as a dark-complexioned East Asian man or woman today, especially Atlanteans with the straight hair. There were also ivory complexion, pale, and or albino Atlanteans as well. There were Atlanteans with very pale skin, as I saw, lacking melanin with kinky, curly, and or straight red, blonde, and brunette hair. There were Atlanteans who could pass as Nordic people today. An Atlantean queen named Raizami, casually called Queen Rai, was one as I saw in a dream. She was an indigenous Atlantean, but had rosy pale skin, long, straight, golden blonde hair, electric ocean blue eyes, full lips, and a fine nose. In the 21st century, she would be classified as a white woman, but she was full-blooded Atlantean. My loves, it is very important to understand that the Atlanteans were an exceptionally beautiful and ethnically diverse people. Their civilization was founded 320,000 BC, and it lasted all the way to 9923 BC. That is a long time for many migrations of people from around the world, especially when Atlantis became a global empire. So we have to get out of this concept that Atlantis was always a melanated civilization, or that they were a Nordic civilization, or that they were, whomever. The truth is, Atlantis represented humanity as a whole. If you've seen a human being, you've seen an Atlantean. And that is the truth. That is what I saw in my spiritual dreams and visions. And I saw what I saw. I'm not gonna give you anything that I did not see in my spiritual dreams and visions from Mother. I'm not doing that. I made an oath when I was ordained. And one might ask, how is this possible though? How are the Atlanteans such a colorful people? This is still a mystery to me, but I believe it has something to do with the genes the Atlanteans carried that was susceptible to change, either because of climatic changes or perhaps thousands of years of migrations, waves of people coming from all over. Albinism was common among Atlanteans, okay, loves? And so I believe when albino Atlanteans began mixing with melanated Atlanteans, that is when the various genetic traits began to manifest in the population throughout the succeeding generations. But the vast majority of Atlanteans were copper-colored and looked like so-named African Americans and indigenous North African Berbers, or Africans in general. And to be honest, I don't like using the term African American, Black, Negro, colored, and what have you to describe my people, because that is not what our ancestors were first called thousands of years ago, as Aboriginal Americans. But that's another video. The point is, they did not have just one universal look, the Atlanteans. They had many different phenotypes. And this is one of the reasons why the Atlanteans were not so fixated on race, because they were used to seeing different looks of people among themselves, many of whom within the same family. Now, as far as racial diversity among the Atlanteans, already being a colorful people, when many foreigners from faraway lands traveled or migrated to Atlantis, this also added more diversity in Atlantean society. Many foreigners became naturalized Atlantean citizens, married Atlantean women, men, and had families. Many interracial marriages were being practiced, and as a result, I don't believe in that term either, interracial. We're all human. That I believe. Many mixed and or so-called mulatto Atlantean children were born. I saw ancient East Asians living and marrying in Atlantis, ancient Europeans from all over Europe, from Aboriginal Europeans to modern-day Caucasians. and even Pacific Islanders, whom during the time looked no different from indigenous Atlanteans such as the Papuans. Atlantis was a global empire, so all kingdoms and states of the antediluvian world and the people thereof both traded and lived with the Atlanteans. Atlantis was a very heterogeneous society. Even when it was only the indigenous, where there's still a colorful people. They were still a colorful people. To be Atlantean was not a racial thing, but a spiritual thing. Atlantis was the universal kingdom and culture of humanity. I will repeat that. Atlantis was the universal kingdom and culture of humanity. The first civilization. Humanity's roots. Diversity was celebrated, but many also took pride in their origins and own identities through being naturalized Atlanteans. Even the 12 clans of Atlantis had their own identities and cultures. My loves, by the time Atlantis had fallen during the Imperial Age, the Atlanteans as a whole, as a society, began to look a lot like modern-day Brazil, or Brazilians, for example, which included many who lived in the Americas. This also led to the colorful diversity of the American Aborigine people. And this is something that that is not taught, that many believe that American people or indigenous Americans all had one look and had one origin. That is not true. That is not true. There were many waves of people from all over the world, from Asia, from South Pacific, from Africa, from Europe. There were indigenous Americans who looked like Caucasians. This is from really old historical books and records, which I have cited in my books, but in this channel, I'm not going to really go into that detail, but in other videos, I am going to talk about that particular thing and cite a lot of the books that I have read concerning this topic, because everything that I'm saying is new, okay? Because this is the Atlantis that many people have not heard about. But you'll be surprised that many historical writers, especially Constantin Samuel Rafinesque, or C.S. Rafinesque, speaks a lot about the Atlanteans and the old world civilizations of the Americas. American civilization and history that is not taught in American public schools. When I say Egypt was over here, bold statement, but it's a lot of history in the Americas that a lot of people just do not know. And I believe, as an American, as anybody who lives over here, born over here in the Americas, North, South, Central, or the Caribbean, should know the history of this land, because it is ancient. America has history. It is a very beautiful place with history, but the problem is it is hidden for many reasons that I will not go into. But what race were the Atlanteans? In case you did not catch it, the detailed answer is they originally were a homogeneous melanated people from Africa who naturally evolved or mutated among themselves into a colorful people. And the short answer is they were human. And that's all that matters. If you like this content and you want to know more about authentic Atlantean culture, heritage, spirituality, and language, please consider subscribing to Thala Nation, dedicated to all things Atlantis. It was yours truly, Zaza Cordovana, Kamadalahi Samithi, and as always, may Atlantis rise again. Thank you. Leonani.